Prisons, no matter where they're located, have one purpose: to house those who've broken the law and help them get back on the right track. While some strive to rehabilitate their offenders in humane and supportive environments, others exist as hellish places where punishment seems to be the sole focus. These are the places where the concept of justice is nothing but a distant memory. From the psychological torment of solitary confinement to the physical brutality of forced labor camps, here are the 15 worst prisons in the world that will give you chills to the bone. Number 15. Prison Bmarsh, UK. Prison Bmarsh in London is the answer to how harsh can a high-security prison get? Known for housing terrorists, violent criminals, and other high-profile inmates, it's like the backstage of a crime drama, minus the glamour. Despite its reputation for top-tier security, the conditions are far from first class. Overcrowded cells turn tension into a contact sport, and the lack of adequate medical care leaves many inmates battling untreated ailments, both physical and mental. Self-harm and suicide rates here are alarmingly high, reflecting the psychological toll of life in what some call Britain's Guantanamo. And let's not forget the frequent lockdowns, which add to an already explosive atmosphere. Rehabilitation programs? Well, minimal. Hope? Scarce. For inmates, it's a daily grind of survival, making Bmarsh infamous not just for its residents, but for its super worst reputation as a place where humanity is often stripped away. Number 14. Lante Prison, France. Lante Prison in Paris isn't just famous, it's infamous. If walls could talk, these would scream. While its name sounds almost poetic, doesn't it? But don't let the name fool you. Health is the last thing on anyone's mind here. Overcrowded, filthy, and downright inhumane, it's less city of light and more city of darkness. Imagine cramming 3 people into a cell meant for one, with moldy walls and a stench you can't escape. Disease thrives here like it's on a permanent vacation. And violence? Well, let's say it's as routine as the morning coffee you're not getting. Guards aren't exactly friendly, and solitary confinement is their favorite punishment. Nothing says rehabilitation like losing your sanity. Medical care is as rare as a clean toilet, and basic necessities are a luxury. La Santé might be in Paris, but there's no romance behind these bars. It's a grim reminder that not all prisons aim for justice. Some just leave inmates to rot. Number 13. Red Onion State Prison, USA. Red Onion State Prison in Virginia is the kind of place where time feels heavier than the walls that surround it. Built to isolate the most dangerous offenders, this supermax facility pushes the limits of what the human mind and body can endure. Most inmates are locked in solitary captivity for 23 hours a day, a punishment that goes beyond physical restraint and sinks deep into the psyche. Depression, anxiety, and hallucinations become unwelcome friends in those long, lonely hours. When not in isolation, prisoners face reports of excessive force from guards and a system that provides little access to medical care or basic human interaction. The sole purpose of Red Onion is to keep its inmates behind bars, without regard for their well-being or potential for rehabilitation. Despite ongoing criticism and calls for reform, Red Onion continues to operate within its walls of isolation and strict confinement practices. And for those trapped inside, there is no end in sight. Number 12. Vladimir Central Prison, Russia. Vladimir Central Prison isn't just a prison. It's a relic of misery dating back to the 1700s. Its walls have seen it all, from political prisoners to hardened criminals, and the suffering never took a day off. The prison is severely overcrowded, with inmates crammed into filthy, poorly ventilated cells. Illness is rampant due to unsanitary conditions, and the lack of medical care only worsens the situation. Physical abuse by guards is frequently reported, which creates a climate of fear and submission. And if we talk about rehabilitation programs, they're virtually non-existent. The only thing prisoners can hope for is to survive their sentence. Vladimir Central Prison is a prime example of the inhumane treatment that prisoners face in Russia. The need for reform in the country's penal system cannot be overstated. However, as they say, Putin know how to handle Russian stuff in a way nobody else does. The future of Vladimir Central Prison is pretty clear. More suffering and misery with no end in sight. So count yourself lucky if you're not a resident of this hellish prison. Number 11. ADX Florence USA. ADX Florence in Colorado is often referred to as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, but there's nothing romantic about this supermax prison. Designed for the country's most dangerous criminals, it operates on a philosophy of extreme isolation. Prisoners spend up to 23 hours a day in solitary confinement, with minimal human interaction. Meals are delivered through slots in their cell doors, and even recreational time happens in cages. Over time, this level of isolation erodes mental health, with inmates frequently developing severe depression and anxiety. Communication is tightly controlled, and opportunities for rehabilitation or education are almost non-existent. ADX Florence isn't about reform. It's about keeping society's most feared guys completely cut off from the world. The harsh conditions have sparked debates about human rights, with many questioning whether such treatment is justice or cruelty. For those inside, every day is a struggle to maintain what little remains of their humanity. All right, now, let's move to number 10. La Modelo, Colombia. La Modelo in Bogotá, Colombia isn't just a prison, it's a war zone wrapped in prison bars. This facility has gained infamy for being more controlled by armed gangs than the actual guards. Rival factions constantly clash, often leaving inmates caught in the literal crossfire. Yes, guns somehow exist within these walls, turning it into a place of perpetual fear. The overcrowding here is staggering. Cells meant for 1 or 2 people house 5 or more, leading to unbearable conditions. Hygiene is virtually non-existent, and diseases spread like gossip at a family reunion. Food and medical care? Well, it's barely enough to keep anyone alive. If that's not enough, corruption among prison staff makes matters worse. Guards often look the other way or participate in the chaos, leaving inmates with nowhere to turn. La Modelo isn't just a prison. It's a grim reminder of what happens when law and order are replaced with survival of the fittest. Number 9. Black Dolphin Prison, Russia. Don't let its cute name fool you. Black Dolphin Prison in Russia is where the country's worst offenders, serial killers, terrorists, and more end up. But being locked up here isn't just about losing your freedom. It's about losing any semblance of humanity. The prison operates under a suffocating regime. Inmates are blindfolded whenever they're moved, reducing them to shadows of themselves. Surveillance is relentless, and isolation is the norm, with prisoners spending most of their lives in tiny, barren cells. Interaction with others is rare, and reports of physical abuse and psychological torment by guards only add to the horror. There's no rehabilitation here, just a strict routine designed to crush the human spirit. For those confined, time crawls while hope disappears entirely. Black Dolphin isn't just a maximum security prison. It's a place where even the walls seem to conspire against you, ensuring every day feels like an eternity. Number 8. Black Beach Prison, Equatorial Guinea. Black Beach Prison in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, is a name that strikes fear into the hearts of anyone familiar with it. This is a place where suffering isn't just an outcome, it's the system. Overcrowding is relentless, with inmates packed into tiny, poorly ventilated cells. Sanitation is a distant dream, and diseases spread unchecked, making health crises an everyday reality. Worse still, reports of torture and abuse by guards are frequent, creating a climate of fear that's impossible to escape. Many inmates are detained without trial, left to rot for years without legal recourse. Solitary confinement and arbitrary punishments strip away what little humanity remains. Corruption within the system ensures these conditions persist, with no one held accountable. Black Beach isn't just a prison, it's a humanitarian crisis behind bars. It's a stark reminder of what happens when justice is abandoned in favor of unchecked power and cruelty. Number 7. Mendoza Prison, Argentina. Mendoza Prison in Argentina is overcrowding personified. This facility, built for far less inmates, now resembles a human storage unit. Cells are crammed to the point where personal space is a forgotten concept, and the lack of sanitation means illness is just another cellmate. Food is scarce, healthcare is minimal, and violence is rampant. Gang conflicts spill over into the daily lives of inmates, with physical altercations happening almost routinely. If that wasn't enough, corruption among prison staff allows drug trafficking, extortion, and other criminal activities to flourish unchecked. Rehabilitation programs are practically non-existent, leaving inmates trapped in a cycle of survival. Mendoza isn't just a prison, it's a harsh reflection of a system pushed beyond its limits. For those inside, it's not just a sentence, it's a battle to make it through the day. Number 6. Kamiti Maximum Security Prison, Kenya. Kamiti Maximum Security Prison, just outside Nairobi, Kenya, is a place where overcrowding and suffering go hand in hand. Built to hold 1,400 inmates, it regularly crams over 3,000 into its walls, turning cells into sardine cans. There's barely enough space to sit, let alone sleep comfortably, and the stench of neglect lingers in the air. Food and clean water are a luxury few can count on, and medical care? Practically non-existent. Inmates face diseases like malaria and tuberculosis, with little hope of treatment. On top of that, physical abuse by guards is common, making the atmosphere oppressive and fear-filled. Corruption runs rampant, with bribes often determining who gets slightly better treatment or who gets to avoid the worst of it. Survival here isn't just about enduring time, it's about navigating a system that seems built to break you. Kamiti isn't just a prison, it's a symbol of a broken justice system in desperate need of reform. Number 5. Bang Kwang Central Prison, Thailand. Known as the Bangkok Hilton, Bang Kwang Central Prison is anything but luxurious. Overcrowding defines life here, with inmates crammed into tiny, stifling cells. Designed for a few, these cells often hold many, and privacy is non-existent. Food portions are meager, water isn't always clean, and medical care is minimal at best. If someone falls sick, recovery depends more on luck than medicine. What truly sets Bang Kwang apart is the use of shackles, sometimes kept on prisoners for years, leaving both physical scars and emotional wounds. The guards enforce strict discipline, and physical abuse isn't uncommon. Add to this the heavy presence of death row inmates, and the atmosphere feels perpetually grim. Survival in Bang Kwang isn't about rehabilitation or reform, it's about enduring a punishing system. The prison's nickname feels like a cruel joke, given the daily reality for those behind its bars. Number 4. Gani Prison, Georgia. Gani Prison in Tbilisi, Georgia, might look unassuming from the outside, but what happens within its walls is the stuff of nightmares. In 2012, leaked videos revealed guards torturing and sexually abusing inmates, shocking the world and highlighting systemic abuse. Even without the abuse, conditions are grim. Overcrowding is a constant issue, with cells packed well beyond capacity. Hygiene is poor, food is scarce, and medical care is barely functional, leaving inmates vulnerable to illness and malnutrition. Violence is part of daily life, with guards and inmates alike contributing to an atmosphere of fear. The global outcry after the videos led to promises of reform, but the shadow of Gani's past still looms large. For those imprisoned there, survival means enduring a brutal environment with little hope for justice. Gani stands as a grim reminder of how far a system can stray from the principles of rehabilitation. Now, let's move to Number 3. Butyrka Prison, Russia. Butyrka Prison in Moscow is as notorious as it is old. Dating back to the 19th century, it feels like time stopped, and not in a good way. Overcrowding is severe, with multiple inmates squeezed into cells designed for one or two. Privacy doesn't exist, and the lack of ventilation turns these spaces into suffocating boxes. Hygiene is appalling, and diseases like tuberculosis spread rapidly, unchecked by the limited medical care available. Guards don't just enforce the rules, they often use violence to assert control, creating an environment of constant fear and brutality. Rehabilitation programs are non-existent, and basic necessities are treated like luxuries. For those inside, Butyrka isn't just a prison. It's a place where hope and humanity are eroded daily. Its grim conditions make it one of Russia's most infamous detention centers, a stark reminder of the human cost of neglect and systemic failure. Number 2. Camp 14, North Korea. Camp 14 in North Korea isn't just a prison. It's a place where lives are systematically destroyed. Officially known as Kwanli-So No. 14, this political prison camp detains entire families for perceived offenses against the regime. Prisoners endure forced labor from dawn to dusk, often in brutal conditions that leave them physically and emotionally broken. Food is barely enough to sustain life, leading to widespread malnutrition and starvation. Medical care is non-existent, and disease takes countless lives without intervention. Public executions and routine beatings are a part of life, ensuring that fear controls every action. For those imprisoned, survival means enduring the unendurable while knowing there's little hope of release. Camp 14 isn't just a prison, it's a chilling testament to the extent of human rights abuses in North Korea, a place where survival itself is an act of defiance. Number 1. Diyarbakir Prison, Turkey. Diyarbakir Prison in southeastern Turkey is infamous for its dark history, especially during the 1980s and 1990s. Originally intended to house criminals, it became a place of torment for political prisoners, particularly those of Kurdish descent. Overcrowding was rampant, with prisoners crammed into filthy cells that lacked proper ventilation or sanitation. Hunger was common, and medical care was virtually non-existent, leaving inmates to suffer from untreated illnesses. Torture wasn't just a rumor. It was standard practice. Beatings, psychological abuse, and inhumane treatment were inflicted to break prisoners physically and mentally. Protests and hunger strikes became acts of resistance, but they also highlighted the desperation of those inside. While reforms have been introduced, Diyarbakir remains a symbol of state brutality and oppression. Its legacy continues to haunt Turkish society, a reminder of the cost of silencing dissent. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.